Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question comes to us from the True Stories collection. Amy controls Elesh Norn and Omnath, and she plays the land. What happens? Alright, so before we tackle this question, I'd like to first consider another similar situation that'll help illustrate the answer. Let's say that Amy just has an Omnath and no Elesh Norn, and she plays a fetch land. That'll cause Omnath's landfall ability to trigger. Maybe in response to that trigger, she wants to crack the fetch land, which would get her another land and cause Omnath to trigger again. Now, I don't think anyone out there is trying to argue that Amy would be gaining 4 life twice in this case, but the fact is that this is exactly equivalent to the scenario described in the original problem statement. It doesn't matter how we got 2 instances of Omnath's trigger onto the stack. Omnath's ability doesn't look at how it triggered to determine its effects, only how many times that ability has resolved. And so this gives us the answer to the original question. The first trigger that resolves will cause Amy to gain 4 life. The second will give her 4 mana. By the way, in case you were wondering, if you copy Omnath's ability with something like a Strionic Resonator, that also works exactly the same way. Let's observe that Omnath's ability doesn't do anything at all on the 4th or subsequent times that it resolves, meaning that if Amy has another land enter the battlefield this turn, she will get another 2 triggers. The first of these will result in 4 damage, but the second will do absolutely nothing at all. And that's all. Well, I guess we have a little extra time today, so let's take a look at some other cards that this deck plays. A lot of the time the removal will be some combination of Leyline Binding and Chain to the Rocks. Leyline Binding is a pretty obvious include since it's a great card by itself, but Chain to the Rocks isn't really seen as much. But if you look at how these cards are templated, they both interact with Elesh Norn very favorably. If you get a second instance of that trigger, that'll work exactly the same as the first one did, exiling a creature until Chain to the Rocks leaves the battlefield. Now, there's another enchantment that these decks like to play, and it looks like it could synergize really well with Elesh Norn, and that card is Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So let's take a look at exactly what happens when it enters the battlefield with an Elesh Norn out. At first glance, maybe it might look like it should start out with 2 lore counters, but unfortunately that's not really how this works. See, the thing that puts the lore counters on sagas as they enter the battlefield is not a triggered ability, it's a replacement effect. Elesh Norn doesn't make those work twice, so you would just get 1 lore counter, the same as what you normally get. By the way, this is the same reason why Elesh Norn doesn't give all of your planeswalkers double loyalty counters when they enter the battlefield. That's also a replacement effect, not a triggered ability. Well, that's a bummer, but you also get a 2/2 goblin when the Fable of the Mirror Breaker enters the battlefield. So maybe with Elesh Norn out, you could get an extra one. Except it turns out that doesn't work either. Make no mistake about it, the thing that gives you that goblin token is actually a real life, bona fide triggered ability. It's just that Fable entering the battlefield isn't what causes that triggered ability to trigger. As you can see here, the thing that makes chapter abilities trigger is actually not a permanent entering the battlefield, but a lore counter being put onto the saga. That means that this too does not interact with Elesh Norn at all, giving us the final answer that I mentioned earlier. On the plus side, this also means that if your opponent has an Elesh Norn, your Fable of the Mirror Breaker will work entirely normally, which is absolutely not the case with Omnath or Chain to the Rocks. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.